Huh.
All right, so we're, I'm not sure you're going to be able to see this from this angle, but I have the block glued in that we did previously. Got it glued in. Got a couple of little cleats glued in along the cut as well. You'll see those again before we get it closed up. I have done a test on the finish. Just took a Q-tip with lacquer thinner. Doesn't do anything whatsoever to this finish. So it's got to be a poly of some sort, or a catalyzed poly or something. Whatever. It's not lacquer. It's nothing that I'm going to be able to burn into. So once I'm got all the repairs done, it's just going to be a matter of shooting poly on this, or even brushing poly on this, but and then sanding it and buffing everything up. There's definitely going to be an overlap in the finish somewhere because it's not going to melt in. So I now have that to deal with now. I was been debating how to proceed here, and I initially thought, cut the wood out of the top, cut the wood out of the bout here. The rationale there is that, well, I didn't want to do just a notch into the top because you'd see in grain and it would be really obvious, and that on the top I'm still going to stick with that. Obviously I can't cut the band off of the guitar all the way around so that there's no end grain patching, no definite cut where the old wood and the new wood will start, straight across grain. So my reasoning for that being okay was, well, there's nothing else I can do about that, and it's the bottom of the guitar, right? When you flip this over into the playing position, or when you stand it up and put it on a stand, it's not really in an obvious place. So by that same train of logic, I'm thinking, well, we could just fill it then, right, and paint it in or stain it in as dark as possible to match, and just not worry about it. Nobody's going to see it. And I almost went that way, but the more I think about different kinds of fillers, and it's just the gobby thing to do, and I just can't bring myself to do it. So what I'm going to do is just cut through the veneer. This is a veneered side, laminated side. It's not a solid piece of wood. If that were the case, I might be tempted to actually just cut almost like a finger joint, cut into it, little fingers, and do the same here. I mean, it would be ridiculously time consuming and probably not worth the effort if I could even pull it off and make it look decent. So I am going to just basically make a cut straight across here, and then down, and I'll remove a layer or two of the veneer. I'm not going to go down to the block that I have inside the guitar. That's not necessary. It may become necessary as I remove layers of material. This is delaminated in here, which, well, maybe not. Anyway, if I open this up and it starts wanting to pull apart and open up on the laminations, then what I'll do is I'll blow some glue into that, clamp it down, let that dry, and then I will just put the patch in. The patch will have to be stained to match, and the top is going to have to be stained to match, and then fix the binding and go from there. So fun, fun, fun. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tape it off and cut through the tape. I'm going to have finish damage. I got to refinish over that patch and then blend it in as much as I can anyway. So there's definitely going to be some what they call witness lines. Anytime you try to sand through or blend a finish over another finish that's not burned in, as you sand through the different layers of finish, you're going to get a little telltale line that will show up if you look at it at the right angle or in the right light. You know, there's only so much you can do. So that's what's going to happen. I'm going to go ahead and going to make a couple marks here on the face so that I know where I want to make my cuts when I go in. So I want to cut here and here. So, all right, I'll bring you back in after I get things taped up. Okay, got this taped off. Once again, I'm using this nut string layout nut dealio because it bends nice. And I'm using my fat X-Acto knife. I typically use a number 11, which I've got blades laying all over the place. Anyway, I thought this was a little heavier cut. Actually, I used the 11 on the top, and I should have used a heavier knife, but so got a fresh blade in there. I'm just going to lay my square with the face of the guitar and use that to trace with. Trying to stay keeping the blades, you know, at the same angle the whole way across the cut, because I'm not laying directly on top of the guitar, so there is room for some margin of error. I could freehand it, but I'm just not comfortable freehanding. I don't know if it was all the years as a cabinet maker. I like to have a controlled cut. If I was cutting rafter tails or something hanging off the edge of a building, I'd freehand it. Go that way a little bit. Okay, so have those cuts across the grain. Alright, yeah, I'm probably just going to be in the, yep, you're not really going to see this happen because my hand is going to be blocking the cut or the camera, but and once I get these cuts, I'll probably run them in a little deeper, and then I'll get a small chisel and start chiseling down through the veneer here as flat and level to the surface as possible, so that when I put a new piece in, it will sit flat and tight. I hope I don't regret this. Freehanding. Try and deepen that cut up a little bit. Okay. I don't have my magnifying visor on, which is probably not a good idea. Okay. So, I'm going to peel this piece of tape out. I'm going to leave this other stuff in place. I'll just flop that piece back over there to protect that area. I'm going to grab a chisel. See how this starts peeling out here. I'm probably not going to film all of this. I'm going to want my magnifier on now, and I'm also going to want to sharpen this chisel, so we'll see how far we get before I have to call it for sharpening. I don't know if this is going to pop up here. Probably didn't get very deep. Alright, you got the basic idea. I'm going to continue to deepen the score marks in this, and then I'm going to come back at it with a chisel. But I need to sharpen my chisel. It's feeling a burr on it, and it's not cutting much. So, yeah, that's it. Bring you back in later. Okay, at this stage, basically just have the finish off. There's a little bit just in places where the veneer has come down. Previously I scored, along the edges here. I came back after I did that, after I turned the film off for the video. I came back in and I cut next to the line, an 1/8 of an inch. So, and what that caused was the finish to pop from the initial score line to the new score line. I was able to pop that finish out get it away from the edge, so that I knew I had a clean break. Did the same thing on this other side, and then also down the edge, down the length of it, I came along and cracked that off as well. So at that point, I was able to just take the chisel and go in and just pop the finish off. So a little tricky right in here. It came off fine. As far as I can tell, I don't have that scale off of there yet. So until that happens, we won't really know how clean edge I got. And that's not critical. I just want a clean cut on the veneer. The finish, is going to have to pull in next to the existing finish and be level sanded out and all that good stuff, as we know. So all I'm doing now is I've just resharpened the chisel, because I sharpened it a little bit and popped that finish off. I'm also going to just do another score across here with the X-Acto. I seem to be coming down a little sideways on that cut, so I'll probably just get that with the tip of my chisel and clean that up. And I've done this a few times. I don't plan on going as deep as the entire thickness of the side of the guitar. If I have to get down to a good flat radius, that is the block, then I will, but I'm hoping I don't have to go that far. So I'm just going to start peeling veneer here. And the new veneer that I put in will probably end up being a little proud of the existing surface, so that I can take a block and sand that in and get all the the radius consistent and all that. So if it's not 100% matching the the existing radius. By the time I get it in and get everything sanded off, it will be fine. Since I have veneer that's been mashed and then pushed back out with the block and re-glued, it's hard to say if I can trust any one layer of veneer and say, yeah, this is going to be a perfect radius, perfectly consistent with the top of the surface. So anyway, I just wanted to give you a little bit of this to see what I'm doing here. I'm gonna leave this band up against here until I get more of it off, and then I'll come back and go this way up against the rule. Yep. And I may even, just to kind of help myself get a flat, smooth radius. I just don't want kinks and dips and all that kind of stuff. I may come in here with a very, very small little block with some paper on it, sandpaper, and just sand in between the edges here, and kind of true up any irregularities I might have in the surface from just going at it here with a chisel. Still actually have some of the finish urethane that's penetrated down into the grain here, and that's what's that dark area you see, and then also it's just making it a little more difficult to peel that layer. So that's the mahogany right there, the darker wood, and we're getting down to this lighter wood, which is also mahogany from the looks of it. Grain wise, it looks like it, not color wise. Just trying to avoid that jumping right to the edge and either cutting deeper than I want to or hitting the edge of my chisel on that metal scale there and dinging it up. I definitely have a high spot here in the sub. Yep, that piece is moving a little bit, so I'll put some glue under that and clamp it down, stabilize it. Alright. If I start working on this, I'm going to have to lean into the camera, and I'm just going to block the view anyway, so I'm going to turn you back off and continue on. Alright, bring you back later. Okay, bringing you back in here for just a really quick little update. I took some water thin CA, again doing a commercial here. I really like Type Bond products, not that you know, the StuMac water thin CA works wonderfully. I just happen to work at a hardware store, and I can pick this up locally, and it's really convenient. Don't have to order it. Type Bond also has the accelerator. So I totally saturated all of this with water thin CA or super glue, and then I started on the low end because the accelerator would tend to run downstream, and so I just used the end of the straw, the snorkel that sucks it up into the pump. Just open the bottle up and do that, and then just dap a drop right where you're holding the veneers together. And I just worked my way up across here holding it down, dabbing a little bit of accelerator on it, and just move my way across. And that's got everything really solidified in there. So now I have a nice solid surface that I can glue my my new veneer, when I make a veneer out of mahogany to put back on there. Now in the process of doing that though, I went to put the little snorkel back in the tube in the pot here, and I knocked the thing over. So I had a brand new almost full bottle, and now it's basically a brand new empty bottle, almost empty. So if you're doing that sort of thing, please try to have more coordination than I do. Okay, second thing is I've talked about the fingernail file emery board thing here. Like, this is a Revlon. I just bought a bundle of these at Walmart or somewhere. So, and I said in the previous video that I was just gonna get in here and try to, you know, block sand this out and get this all leveled up. So I've been sanding on this. After I glued it and set it off with the accelerator, I went back in with the chisel and I took another, you know, another layer of veneer off, and tried to get it as even as possible like that, freehanding with a chisel. Then I went ahead and got back in here and just sanded all the way across, right, up and down this way, across grain, trying to get the contour, smooth the contour out both directions, you know, so I can get down into that edge. Then I decided, you know what, if I had a square corner on that thing, it would be a lot handier. So I squared that off, and I can actually get right up into the corners and do that, and sand right down, right tight into the corners on these things, which is pretty handy. So that's the update. That's where we're at. I am going to go ahead and prep. I'm going to find, I got lots of mahogany, so I'm going to find mahogany that, if I can, that's fairly similar in grain to this. Then I will probably bring you back in. I had some questions on a previous video about making shims having to be tapered shims. Basically, this is the same sort of thing, just thinning out what will start out as a much thicker piece of mahogany and making it into a veneer for this. So it's going to be similar in the process, so I'll probably bring you in and show you that as well. All right. Okay, so this is I'm going to back out a bit here. This is the piece of the mahogany. This is actually a piece of blood mahogany, which is a couple of guitars ago. And it's if you look, I don't know if you'll be able to see that or not, but the grain here is nearly vertical on this side, and then it's got a little bit of a sweep to it and back to vertical. So this is what you would call, from this edge of it, would be called quarter sawn, and that's what this emulates. This, I mean, this piece of veneer is quarter sawn. That's how you get that look in mahogany. So that's what I'm going to do. Now the face of this, the more quarter sawn face, has some chipping in it, and so what I'm going to do is I'll take a piece that's a bit wider than I really need, thicker, and I'll just run that through my sander until I get past the chips here, and I'll flip it over and I'll sand the saw cut side, and then I'll get it down to where I need to fit it. But I'll get it down to the approximate thickness here. I'm going to leave it a little thicker than it needs to be, so that when I glue it in, I can then just sand it flush with the the existing profile of the side of this guitar. So that's it. Just wanted to show you what piece of wood I had chosen, and there you can kind of see the grain marks. It's the growth rings basically, but instead of going, well, that's flat sawn, right? If you were to cut it with the growth rings going that way, that's flat sawn. Pretty much any way that's not, I mean, there is another way, but you'll see all kinds of things that are called flat sawn. It's just because depending on where you run the blade through the round log, right, you could actually get some quarter sawn, incidentally by doing that, but most of it's going to be flat sawn. So the grain let me see, I do have a piece laying around here somewhere. Here we go. Now this is mahogany, but it's a lot lighter. And this piece of mahogany, this is flat sawn. So if you could see the edge of this board, the end of this board, it's coming up on being quarter sawn this way. So the top edge of this board, and I don't know if you can see that or not. You can really tell on the camera, but that's more in keeping with what the surface of the guitar looks like. The edge of that board looks quarter sawn, very similar to this grain pattern. So when you turn the board, basically 90 degrees in this situation, you get pretty much flat sawn to quarter sawn. And so this one happens to be a redder piece, and then wide enough piece that's quarter sawn. I've got, like I said before, I've got lots of mahogany around, but I don't want to cut a little corner off of a big billet. So this is going to be the guy, and I'll bring you back in later after I get things set up and on sizing it. If you've seen a bandsaw operate, I'm not going to bother with that. So we'll just bring you back in after I get the sander hooked up. Okay, so we're here at the random orbital sander. I can move that out of the way. You can see it's just a standard. It's a Grizzly little bench top. I have it set up with the same bench with my 12-inch disc sander. And I have a vacuum cleaner set up, and I just switch the hose back and forth. So this is the little riser plate. I talked about this in a previous video. And so what happens here with the other piece I made, the other jig, maybe I should try to explain this first of all. So this thing is hinged. It's on a spring hinge, just a regular cabinet door. Spring hinge. I have a bolt that went into an insert, threaded insert, and if you watch that, as you turn the bolt, it opens the door. So I start out with it pretty much flat. The thing when I made this thing, I made it with the idea of just flattening out peg heads, so I didn't have to worry about this being a 3/4 inch gap between here and the bottom of the table. But with this other material like a nut or a saddle or smaller pieces, this piece would probably even work, just to be on the safe side. If I put this sleeper board down here, that takes up this 3/4 inch offset, and that allows me to open the door. Well, it's not opening. There we go. Get my finger under it. Open the door, and then the material that I'm working on doesn't have a gap under it. So I hope that's clear enough. So I'm just setting this thing up and just pretty much put it right on the table and then clamp it on. So there we are. It's not going anywhere. I think I will get a spring clamp my little sleeper down so it doesn't go anywhere. Then I'm going to reposition the camera and bring you around to this side so you can see the material going in here, and a push rod so that I don't get my fingers in there. Be right back. All right, right back. So spring clamp. So that guy is just going to go right here. Won't be in the way, so I'm working on this side of it. So that's not going to be flopping around. Now, this was the edge that had some chipping on it, and this is the side I ran. Oops, this is the edge that had chipping, or the face. This one I ran through the bandsaw. This is going to be coming way down from this thickness. So I'm going to do, since this chip side, although it's chipped, it's still flat. I'm going to go ahead and establish flat over here. And I actually got my my fence a little too close. There we go. So we'll call that good. And I'll move this over. And we're good there. All right, so I'm going to fire this thing up, and chances are it's going to be so loud that I'm going to kill the audio on the video. So it's either going to go quiet or it's going to go. Maybe if I can figure out how to do a voiceover, we'll get voiceover happening. But all right, so push stick, gonna go on in with that, go through. Just got a slight little tight point on that. Anyway, we'll just progress. Here we go, lots of noise. So it's not thin enough yet. It's still got a ways to go before it's going to be thin enough. You can see that the grain is, looks normal, correct for a quarter sawn piece of wood and piece of mahogany anyway. So that's going to be thinned out until it's the right thickness. At that point, I should be able to bend it without any real trouble, and I'll get it glued in, and at some point I'll bring you back in